we will show you the survey and start our discussion. Thank you all for joining us today, to those here and to those joining us at the live stream. My name is JP Thomas, and I'm the Vice President of Voice of the People. Today's forum is part of a promising new effort to better connect elected officials and their constituents, led by Voice of the People, a nonpartisan nonprofit aiming to give the American people a greater voice in the policymaking process. We are very pleased to be co-hosting this public consultation with Maryland Matters. What we are doing today is an experiment in democracy, trying to help improve communications between the public and their representatives to give the public a greater voice. Our public consultation looks to promote civil dialogue, identify common ground on critical issues, and help elected officials connect with constituents about policy. In this process, we asked a large representative sample of citizens in the 6th District to partake in an online policymaking simulation that gave citizens the same experience their representative would have in the policymaking process. The way we do this is by putting citizens in the shoes of their representatives through a policymaking simulation. This works by giving citizens a briefing on the issue, a pro and con arguments, and a chance to then register their position on how they would vote. Then citizens who went through the process were invited to join us here today to discuss the findings and the issue with Congressman Trone. Today's policymaking simulation was developed by University of Maryland and their program for public consultation. And when developing these simulations, they consult expert proponents and opponents of these issues to make sure that the briefings and the arguments are the strongest ones being made, just like the ones on the floor of Congress. This forum is all about your government hearing from you. In the policymaking simulation, you are dealing with the same issues that a member of Congress are dealing with. Those decision points you made are actual bills in Congress. Today's public consultation will focus on legislative proposals to address substance use disorders. This is the 10th such consultation Voice of the People has convened with members of Congress, and each time citizens have the facts and hear the best arguments from both sides, they are able to consider competing values and the potential impact on the common good for all of us. Before we reveal the survey results and begin our discussion with Congressman Trone, we have some brief introductory remarks. First, we're pleased to co-host this event with Maryland Matters, a nonprofit newsroom covering Maryland government and politics. Today, we're joined by Maryland Matters Editor-in-Chief, Danielle Gaines. Previously, she spent 6 years at the local Frederick News Post as the paper's principal government and politics reporter. Thank you for your support, Danielle. The mic is yours.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you here. Good afternoon. Thanks for spending your afternoon this way. As JP said, I'm the editor of Maryland Matters. I've been in that role for about 2 years. Maryland Matters is about 7 years old. And I've been a reporter for, at this point, longer than I care to admit. But one of the things that I've always been really aware of and grateful for is the access and privilege that I have to be a part of and to witness the levers of government at work and to see legislative debate and to walk past those like restricted access signs and see what's going on and try to bring that to others. It doesn't necessarily make me a great conversationalist among friends and family because most people have not sat through 5 or 6 or 10 hours of debate and bill markups on things that they want to talk about. And that's one of the reasons I really liked this particular policymaking simulation. I think it really kind of opens up the window on how decisions are being made and the different arguments that you might hear when you're trying to come to a decision on something. So I just want to thank everyone for having me here today, and I look forward to the conversation.
And we're very thankful to Congressman Trone for joining us today to listen to constituents regarding their opinions on these policies. In Congress, Congressman Trone represents the people of Maryland's 6th District and sits on the Appropriations and Veteran Affairs Committees. He founded and chairs the bipartisan Addiction and Mental Health Task Force. Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate you being here with us.
First of all, thank you very much. I really appreciate Voice of the People putting this together. And I really appreciate Maryland Matters, because the more we talk about these issues, the more we can normalize that these are problems that everyday Americans are struggling with all the time. And these are the big problems, the ones that are life and death problems. There's a lot of things we can argue about, but this is life and death, literally. So I ran for Congress, as you know, coming out of a successful business career, as a chance to change things. And because I felt like the system was kind of rigged, where there's never any changes. And that's why there's so much PAC and lobbyist money, over $1 billion every 2 years. So I'm fortunate that I can use my financial resources to finance myself largely. And so what I work on is things that really matter to me that are personal. And substance use disorder is really personal to me. I lost my nephew to fentanyl. Most of you probably know that. Addiction runs in our family. You know, my dad was an abusive alcoholic, and mental illness, that runs in our family also. And we all know that mental illness, side by side there with addiction. And so that's why we founded the Bipartisan Substance Use Disorder and Mental Health Caucus, to bring those two pieces together. And literally we have 140 members. It's the most active caucus in Congress. So my job is I'm a Democrat. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. That's got to be the focus. And we're here to move the needle with a businessman sense of urgency. Get something done. Don't talk. One gentleman here mentioned don't talk about platitudes. Talk about specific ideas, policy ideas. That's what we're here for. Policy ideas. And the best way to get the policy ideas is listen to the folks that are at the table, that are struggling, that have lived with it. Those are the folks who are going to have the ideas. They're going to have the solutions. I learned that in my business. Something was different in Miami than it was in LA, than it was in Boston. And the only way I got the right decision was to go there and listen to my people, make notes, get ideas, then execute. So we really appreciate you guys stepping up today. And the third piece of this triad is the systemic racism that we have in our criminal justice system. You know, I work really hard in that area because so many folks are justice impacted. I was justice impacted early in my business career, and I came out the other end because I had education, I had the financial resources to hire a lawyer, and frankly, I had white privilege. So I talk about this all the time. So I've been with the American Civil Liberties Union for almost 3 decades, and the Trone Center at the ACLU does all of their legal criminal justice work. We have 45 lawyers work there doing the criminal justice work on mandatory minimums, solitary confinement, death penalty, trying to change those laws all over the United States. So, but tonight it's substance use disorder. 1 million people dead the last 10, 12 years. 1 million predicted to be dead the rate we're going now. 100,000 every year. 80% of those are fentanyl. And suicide, 50,000 dead. 135 people died today from suicide. And it's connected so much with substance use disorder. So these are big deals. These are big issues that it's not just getting 270 right. It's about someone's life, their life, you know, or their imprisonment for what's a disease, not a crime, a disease. So I really thank you for being here today and help us get ideas, because I'm about ideas. I'm about change. I love change because change comes progress. It all works hand in hand. So thanks for being here today, and I'll let you take off, JP.
Thank you, Congressman Trone. So we're going to begin today to talk a little bit about the group of people who went through this policymaking simulation process. Voice of the People got a group of 747 residents of Maryland's 6th District. And this survey was fielded in July and August. And this was a representative sample of the district and was weighted by age, race, gender, and education, consistent with the Census Bureau, as well as partisan affiliation using Maryland voting records. So the first part of the policymaking simulation that you went through was a briefing on this issue, explaining what are substance use disorders. They're defined by a person has a substance use disorder if they meet a couple of the following criteria, including causing physical and psychological harm, negative symptoms from stopping use, like withdrawal, large amounts needed to get the intended feeling or to prevent withdrawal, and people really are looking to stop but are unable to. So we asked the district, do you know anyone who misuses drugs or alcohol, whether or not they have been officially diagnosed? And here were the findings of our survey. 55% of citizens in the district personally know someone who misuses drugs or alcohol. And these numbers are very high among Republicans and Democrats alike. You'll see nationally, the numbers are very similar. 61% of Americans know someone personally going through substance use disorders. So in the briefing, you read that health effects are common with substance use disorders, like damage to organs, lifelong diseases that come from using paraphernalia, such as HIV, as well as overdose. Congressman Trone discussed the incredible, the horrible toll on our communities from this overdose issue. In 2020, 91,000 Americans overdosed, and you'll see here from this chart, men are about twice as likely to overdose than women. And this has been an issue that you'll see. These are all the drug-involved overdoses, and it doesn't include the impact from alcohol and other sorts of damage done from substance use disorders.
For the last 2 years, 110,000. Unbelievable. Look at that arrow. Hockey stick.
And this is quadrupled just in the last 15, 20 years. So we asked in the survey of the district, have you personally known someone who's died from a drug overdose? And the findings were quite startling. 42% of residents personally know someone who has died from an overdose. And that is across the entire district. You'll see nationally, the district numbers are even higher than the national numbers, where 38% nationally know someone personally who's overdosed. So the incredible human personal toll that a lot of us here may know and have experienced is in addition to the financial toll that substance use disorders have on our society, where currently more than $400 billion a year are spent, are the financial costs of these issues. That includes healthcare costs, criminal justice system costs, and lost economic productivity. So what can be done? What actions are being used across the country to impact these issues? Treatment. Treatment in the briefing you read can involve counseling, medication, as well as staying in a rehab center. And the success rate, most do reduce or stop abusing substances, but about half relapse. So treatment is often an ongoing process. The cost effectiveness of treatment has been shown by the National Institute of Health that they estimate that for every dollar spent on treatment, there are $7 in savings for society. So the issue that we are going to be looking into today is the treatment gap. Currently, the federal government spends $20 billion to train healthcare workers and to provide treatment, but there are still 1 million people who need treatment and want it or want more treatment. So we're going to be talking about a legislative proposal today that debates whether federal spending should be increased so as to fill that treatment gap, so that all people who need it and want it are able to get treatment. So before we show you the survey results on this, we're going to walk through the arguments that were provided to each of you so that you could kind of relive that policymaking simulation. The first argument in favor is that treatment is effective, relatively inexpensive, and cost effective, which we showed from the NIH. This was an argument that was found convincing by 83% of residents in the district, with strong bipartisan also finding it convincing as well. You'll see that these numbers matched up very closely with the US national average. 81% found this argument convincing. And we have the entire arguments. I'm going to be summarizing them. But if you have any questions and want more details, I can read out the entire arguments as well. The first argument against increased federal funding was it's not the responsibility of taxpayers in order to pay for treatment. This was found convincing by 48% of the district. So a minority, you'll see a slight majority of Republicans found this convincing, as well as 41% of Democrats. Nationally, the numbers were similar. 41% nationally found this argument convincing. So the second argument in favor that you all reviewed was that many who are dealing with these issues are seeking professional help but are unable to actually get it. This was found convincing by 83% of the district, including a large majority of Republicans and Democrats and independents as well. You'll see these numbers matched up very closely with the national findings, where people find that this argument is something that really touches them. So the second argument against was that moral weakness is the source of addiction, and it should be solved by religious and charitable organizations and not government. This was found convincing by 41% of the district, so a minority, 39% of Republicans, 36% of Democrats, and 53% of independents. And these numbers were slightly higher than the national average, which was 32% found it convincing. So now we ask the public, how high a priority do you believe it should be for Congress to increase federal spending? This, across the district, you will not find these high numbers on many issues. 87% of the district said it should be a very or somewhat high priority for the federal government to fund substance use disorder treatment. And these were incredibly strong numbers across the board. Nationally, slightly lower, but still large majorities, bipartisan, 80% believe that it should be a high priority for Congress to increase federal spending. So now we're going to talk about the specific proposal that you all voted on, $8 billion a year in increased funding to local and state governments to increase the amount of openings and reduce waiting list sizes, as well as offering treatment for people who may not be able to afford it. Also, $2 billion a year to research substance use disorders and train healthcare professionals. Experts estimate that this would enable nearly all people who need and want treatment to get it. So now this is the big moment on the funding proposal, where we asked you all, do you favor or oppose increasing federal spending by $10 billion? You'll see 83% of the district was in favor of spending $10 billion more on the substance use disorder treatment. Very strong numbers. Republicans, 79% in favor. Democrats, 91% in favor. And independents, 73%. These numbers matched up closely. Slightly lower US national, 75% was in favor of this proposal to increase funding. So we're going to begin to hear Congressman Trone give a couple of thoughts on if he finds any of this surprising, any of these survey results, and then we'll get into a discussion where we'd love to hear your all thoughts on this proposal, and we'll be going through with mics after we give Congressman Trone a couple minutes to give his thoughts on these findings.
Frankly, these are type of numbers we've been looking at since we've been in this, working on this issue. So I started on this in 2016 when my nephew passed, and we didn't have the I would say almost tsunami of support that we're beginning to get now. for stopping the fentanyl scourge that's taken so many lives. Why do we have so many people now interested in this? Because we have that many more people dead. The death toll, everybody in here, I guarantee we all know someone that's died of overdoses, every one of us. And those numbers there, we're not 50% yet, but it's getting that way. And certainly when you look at members of Congress, they're people. They know a lot of people. They spend a lot of time in public. It's reached a point now where all of them now virtually know people that have died or in the throes of addiction. And so we're really beginning to get more traction, more support, and within Congress on driving more dollars. So the big state opioid response bill that we passed last session was not the $8 billion we'd like to have. It was $1.75 billion, roughly $2 billion per year for the next 5 years. The problem that was our bill. The problem they had was they only were appropriating it for 1 year at a time. I'm an appropriator also. You want to be on appropriations. That's where the money is. That's what matters. You know, you authorize something, doesn't get any money. You have to appropriate it. So Congress is really the system doesn't make much sense. You have to, all that matters is the appropriation. You can authorize 100 million and no one gets any money. It's irrelevant. It's all about appropriation. So we were appropriating that amount of money 1 year at a time. So now we have an authorizing bill that underlies that point to say, hey, appropriators, signal to the governors that this money is going to be ongoing each year in the future. It's not guaranteed, but it's strongly suggested. And so that's helping us now. The governors can then look at programs that span over 1 year so they can work with things. Most programs you have take multiple years. We're also brought earmarks back too. So we put together a crisis center here in Frederick. We put together one at Meredith Health, all for folks in addiction to have a place to go immediately 24/7 virtually so they can get a place to get help they need. So you're seeing more and more folks using earmarks to fund these type of crisis centers. So I'm totally supportive of this $8 billion. I find it very persuasive, 7-1. That's the kind of ROI we get. I frankly find the number low on the cost of society. VOP has $400 billion. I sit on the Joint Economic Committee also, and we had the congressional gurus, academics do a research project on this. You know what their number was? More, even more. $1.5 trillion a year. Because they look at the cost of those people that died and what they could have done to make the world better and to contribute to society. So it's a 1.5 trillion is the number the JEC committee came up with. So forget the money, of course. It's all about people. But so I'm all in. I find it very persuasive. And it looks like most of the American people also find it persuasive. We like seeing our neighbors stay alive, right? Hello.
Thank you. So we would love to hear from you all, your thoughts on this proposal about closing that treatment gap and making treatment available for those who want and need it. We'll aim for everybody's comment to be about a minute if possible. Thank you.
I'm Allison and I'm from Gaithersburg. I have a question, and it's kind of a two-pronged question. I'm all for helping those who have gotten themselves into this, declining health problem. Why do you think this crisis has skyrocketed in the last several years as opposed to maybe the 10 years prior to that? And wouldn't it be more prudent to have this be a two-pronged attack, not just on increasing treatment and availability, but also looking at why this has skyrocketed over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Wouldn't that help in the future to maybe decrease the number of people that are getting, for whatever reason, on these drugs or alcohol or both?
You want me to take that?
Yes.
That's a great question, and you're absolutely right. We got to look back as to the why. Why'd that happen? But it's been a slow continuum. It started with the opioid addiction and Purdue Pharma, et cetera, where they lied about the addictive nature of OxyContin, et cetera. They lied, and they had an FDA report that lied. So that's the insidious nature of big money campaign donations. They were able to get someone to say something that was not true. And then people died by the hundreds of thousands. Then it shifted from there. Once we got a handle on that, and those pill mills and factories that were putting out hundreds of millions of pills from one little pharmacist, just a drug, it's a drug runner. No different. Then we shifted over to heroin. And then heroin was the issue. But now we're in something that's so much more insidious, and that's fentanyl. Fentanyl costs about 30 times less per kilo than heroin. I'm a business guy. Something costs 30 times less. That's pretty good, right? It's pretty bad, of course. But here's the even worse part. It's 50 times more powerful than heroin. 3 grains of salt. That's all it is. 3 grains of sugar. And you're likely to be dead. You're likely to be dead. When I had cancer, the hospital gave me fentanyl during the operation, and administered correctly, it is a phenomenal good use. So we need it in hospitals. But the reason it's happening and skyrocketed is the money. Always follow the money. And the cartels in Mexico, I was appointed by Speaker Pelosi to be on a committee of all the government committee on tracking fentanyl from China to Mexico to the U.S. And then I was elected co-chairman. There were 2 members of Congress, 2 U.S. senators, 4 outside experts, and 7 representatives of government, DOD, Treasury, intelligence community, Customs Border Patrol, all on the committee. All sent top folks. We went to Mexico City. I led a Codell. We spent a year and a half in research, put out a report. The cartels control 1/3 of the Mexican GDP. 1/3 of the government, the whole GDP in Mexico. It's a $300 billion business, largely the Jalisco and Sonora cartel. And Mexico's made a decision not to chase them, to do a few lip service once in a while, but that's it. And President Obrador's position is hugs, not bullets, because he doesn't want to be at war with them because they're better armed or equally armed as the government. And the government, you either take the money, you're dead, or you ignore them. It's a pretty bad choice. I wish it was different, but it's not different. And China's been no help. Zero. I worked with trying to get the Chinese folks, zero. So we can't stop this flow of it, and the profits are so high, and the addictive nature is so big, but the deaths happen because they want the high that's closest high they can get. So if they get 2.0 milligrams, you can make it, but 2.3, you're dead. So they're pushing the limits on how much they put in each pill, and they mix it now with everything. Adderall, it can be mixed in Oxycontin, it can be mixed in Activan, etc.
Thank you. Any other comments about the proposal to increase federal spending on treatment?
I'm Tom Greenwell. Thank you for having us, Representative Trone, and I feel very strongly about this issue as well. It's affected a friend of mine who probably overdosed off of opioids, was addicted to heroin in the mail, and I appreciate you explaining some of the problems as well. And how? So I guess my question is two-pronged as well. I totally agree with the treatment proposal here. I think treatment is key. But another part of that, and maybe you can speak to it, is education, right? And getting the word out, right? People aren't going to get treated if they don't know that it's available, number one. And then number two, how do you build consensus around this issue? It does seem like there's a bipartisan thinking behind this, but a lot of the public doesn't have a lot of faith in Congress, especially now with shutdown threats, with the speaker issue. So how do we get things done in Congress, or how do we help get things done as constituents in Congress, to get these proposals passed and appropriated, as you said, because what matters is the money and the action, and not talking about it and not arguing about it on the floor is actually getting things done.
Yeah, well, I think you nailed the head on education. You got to educate our young folks as to that one pill can kill. That is the DEA slogan they have now. I've seen it on giant billboards all over the country, because our folks that are and teenagers or 25 years old or 35 years old that might be at a party and might think they can take a Valium. That Valium wasn't bought at Walgreens or CVS. It's probably made by the cartels, and it will 100% have in it fentanyl, because they want you to take that Valium and come back for another and keep the profits rolling. So we've got to get the education to all of our folks out there that one pill can kill, the highly addictive nature of this. But you've also got to educate your members of Congress. And that's what we've been working to do in our task force, by holding meeting after meeting, expert after expert, to bring them in to talk to the members of Congress. And that's really can be very effective. But people in their districts also need to write to their members, and members read the mail. And when they see a lot of mail that looks different, can't be the same mail form letter, they throw that in the garbage. But different, unique letters that say, "Hey, this is real, man. Would you pay attention to this? You know, get on the bandwagon." You know, that is effective. So the voice of the people is absolutely important to the members of Congress, because they're going to read that mail, and they're going to listen to it, and they count those letters they get, and they count them by each bucket.
And I'll throw it back to you.
Hi, my name is Mark. I teach government in Prince George's County. I live in Germantown, and I am curious as to whether or not anybody in Congress actually applies a cost-benefit analysis to proposals. I know you've got the Congressional Research Office. They do, how much legislation is going to cost. But do your colleagues ever look at it? Because right now you have, the treatment, which I'm in favor of. But if you don't get treatment, then you get incarcerated, and that, I think, in Maryland is costing $35,000 to $50,000 a year. We could put somebody in college for that amount. We have Purdue Pharma that declares bankruptcy, and then today I'm looking at the New York Times, and there's an article about Rite Aid declaring bankruptcy and closing stores, and everybody's like, "Oh, boo-hoo," because they expanded, but the areas that are going to be underserved are primarily Black, Hispanic, and low-income Caucasians. So, I mean, there's a whole cascading effect. But do your colleagues, anybody in Congress actually say, "You look, this is how much it's going to cost, this is how much we can save, and we can also help society be a better place," which is what I always tell my kids to do. Make the world a better place. You're 15, 16, you can do something, register, vote, become active, send something to your congressman, even though you're not 18. But I was just wondering, because I turn on the news and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I know what you're doing. I know what a lot of people are doing, but I wonder what the other 430 some odd members are doing on a regular basis, aside from looking pretty and preening in front of the TV.
Let me get one more question for you, and I'll throw it back to you.
There's some of that for sure.
Thank you, Congressman Trone. I'm Bernard Holloway. I'm from Prince George's County, so I appreciate that last questioner. And some of my bonus family live in your district here in Rockville. And part of the reason why I'm here today is this issue is super personal for me, both for me personally about addiction, as well as my bonus family's experience with addiction. And so I really appreciate your commitment to treatment on demand. I think the proposal is really groundbreaking in terms of the scope and scale of where things will touch. But my question is just very specific. To what extent would this proposal support treatment at all forms of the spectrum, not just people going to 90-day intensive inpatient rehab, but to what extent are these services eligible to support outpatient treatment and other supportive services for people that are going through addiction and recovery to get back on track and to be able to work, not just because they need to make money, but also because working is very important to having purpose and framing your light and path and future in recovery.
Okay, two great questions. So I think on the first question there, I wish I had better news to report. There's just the election cycle of every 2 years in the House. they're consumed with getting reelected, and others sometimes are consumed with things that don't make any sense, that don't save lives. And obviously the PAC and lobbyist money at $1.3 billion every 2-year cycle is a big issue, a huge issue. So, I mean, we were trying to fix folks so they could get help in with if they have addicted to meth. And we were trying to get meth treatment where you could take it home for 30 days. But the lobbyist stopped it. Couldn't get the bill done. But we knew from the pandemic, taking home 30 days treatment worked. And it saved people on average about an hour a day in travel time to get their pills. But we couldn't get that done because of the lobbyist. So there's a lot of folks that are in this, I think, for the wrong reasons. They're politicians. They're often state delegates. They're state senators. And then they move into Congress. And I would like to see more business people that could do a cost benefit analysis, just what you said. What's the cost and what's the return? And the return here on lives is not measurable. We cannot measure that. Then we add $1.5 trillion, which I believe is close to the number. That's not comprehensible either. So we've got to really work to educate them. And, we're going to continue to work it, but sometimes you're a lone voice, and they're more interested in getting back to their district. And it takes, the fact that I don't raise money all the time, I'm lucky in that I can talk to more constituents. I can be more present in my district. And when I'm in Hagerstown and Garrett County and Oakland and, Frederick and Germantown, you talk to folks and you see what's going on a little better. And then you have time to be more of a policy wonk. I'm on the policy wonk. You have workhorses and you have show horses. I'm on the work side. I like the work side. I mean, that's why I do this job. I'm not here because I didn't need a job. I'm here on a friggin' mission. It's a mission: addiction, mental illness, systemic racism, medical research, education. That's the mission. End of story. And not everybody's on that mission with that sense of urgency. But the programs, they are very, very myriad different programs. It's a whole panoply that SAMHSA puts out largely, Office of Drug Control, NDCP puts out. So there's a lot of different pieces. But if we could get those numbers higher, they would go to, it's 100 things, that make things can move the needle. It's like climate change. I went to a seminar one time on climate change. I need to learn more about it. So I went to a big intensive seminar by the Aspen Institute, and holy cow, I learned a lot. I mean, because there's so many things we have to do, or we're going to, lose the climate.
Great. I think this will be our last one on this topic.
Mr. Trone, Brandon. So I work in the recovery field, and again, it's a personal story too, family history. I lost a little brother. So I guess what I want to say is I believe 10 billion is great to put in this direction. However, I'm a firm believer that you just can't throw money at a problem like this.
Agreed.
So somebody had mentioned, or a couple people have mentioned, how it's a two-pronged question. Well, I think this is a two-prong, three-prong, maybe even a four-prong problem. Yeah. So people are coming into treatment, and one thing is there's dual diagnosis. You have not only the substance disorder, but you have a mental illness. And people self-medicate. That's why they're there in the first place. Does this bill or does the proposal offer something up for people like that? I know personally a couple places where I've worked, their website's beautiful. They have you thinking you're going to do yoga and art, and there's a mental health arm, all kinds of therapies. And the truth is when you get there, it's bare basics, which is still good. Don't get me wrong, but it's bare basics, and all these things are not offered. So I wanted to know if this is one of the things that the proposal or the money would be going to make sure that these type of issues, or that there is a possibility that people who suffer from this dual diagnosis could have that attacked and taken care of.
Yeah, no, it's everything has got to have wraparound. If you don't have wraparound services in the mental health side, at least 40+%, maybe it's more, have dual diagnosis. So, I mean, my nephew, he had depression, he had anxiety, he had justice impacted, 5 arrests, and addiction. All 3 travel together. That's the way it's always going to be. So, any 28-day program, recovery housing, whatever it might be, crisis center, has got to have the mental health component to it, or you've got no shot at all. No shot. We have a bill we passed last year that's going to help set standards on recovery housing. So I spent 5 years with my nephew, 5 years in the trenches before he died. And so we did a lot of 28-day programs. I did a lot of recovery housing, and I got involved. I was on the front line. And frankly, at one place we were at, everybody turned into heroin addicts. And, they seemed like great folks. Met them, talked to them, visited. One day, all of them are gone. I mean, so we need standards in this industry, and that's one of the bills that is now law we'll begin to work on in the whole recovery area. So we got to touch all of it, or we got absolutely no shot. And there's a lot of mental health stuff coming down the pike too. We have $11 billion of mental health stuff in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That's better known as the gun bill. It didn't do much for guns, but it did do a lot for mental health. So Joe Biden got the best he could get. And, I really support the president on this. And I've talked to the president numerous times, and every time I'm a broken record. Addiction, mental health. Addiction, mental health. That's all I talk about. And every time he says, Dave, I am with you. My son is an addict, and he suffers mental illness. And so he says, I've lived it. And he means it, and he has lived it. So we got a guy there that put $11 billion. Nothing like that's ever been done. But Joe Biden did that.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, everybody, for those great remarks and for those great questions. We really appreciate your involvement. So the next proposal we're going to be talking about is treatment available to people in prison. Around 2/3 of all prisoners have substance use disorders, and for many of those people who ended up in prisons, as you mentioned, Congressman, it was related to their substance use disorder, whether they violated drug laws, committed crimes under the influence, or committed crimes in order to pay for some of the substance. And currently, about 1 in 10 people in prison are actually able to receive substance use disorder treatment. So there's been a proposal in Congress that's been put forward to provide additional funds as grants to cities and states that want to expand or set up programs for substance use disorder treatment in prisons. So we're going to look at a couple arguments here. The first one is the argument in favor. It's that it's better for everyone because it reduces the likelihood that they will commit a crime again once they leave prison. This argument was found convincing by 81% of residents in the district, including bipartisan support, 77% of Republicans, 87% of Democrats. And those numbers matched up exactly with the national findings, where 81% also found this argument convincing. The argument against is that prison is for punishment, not therapy. Being away from drugs while in prison should be enough. This argument was found convincing by 39% of constituents in the district, including 43% of Republicans, 34% of Democrats, 41% of independents. And nationally, this was found convincing by a little less. 32% nationally found this argument convincing. So now we're going to show you the results of the survey on this proposal, which was about providing funds for grant programs for cities and states to expand or set up substance use disorder treatment programs in prisons. This proposal was favored by 78% of constituents in the district, 71% of Republicans and 86% of Democrats. These numbers matched up very closely with the US national findings at 74%, but you'll see that we've seen on these last two proposals actually stronger support here in Maryland's 6th district than nationally. Congressman Trone, do you have any thoughts on these survey findings before we begin our discussion?
The number on that says they don't think it makes any sense, that number should be 0. There's 2.3 million people in prison. They're incarcerated. 95% of them will return to society. So we ask ourselves a question. Do we want them to succeed and have a second chance? We're 100% yes. How are we going to do that? We're going to help them with their addiction. We're going to help them get a job, because if they have a job, recidivism's 8% when they leave. If they don't, it's 75%. So we're going to help them get a job. And we got to do the mental health wraparound services if we don't help on the mental health side. And that is a train wreck. I've got 7 prisons in my district, 1 federal, 6 are state. I've been inside all the prisons. We work with the Bureau of Prisons, Colette Peters. We funded them last year an extra $180 million out of my subcommittee on commerce, justice, and science for education and for job vocational training. But the point in prison is, yes, it's punishment. The day you go there, that's punishment. Your family, nobody's there. I mean, I took my nephew out in an orange jumpsuit one day. So, I mean, I understand it. I, saw it there with him and, what it did. And he was, not very old. But the point is this, every other day after that ought to be about a second chance. People in prison have one thing, they have time on their hands. So why don't we work on getting education and getting vocational job training or job training for those folks. So when they come out, they can get that job, they can get a house over their head, have a vehicle to get to work, have mental health wraparound services, have addiction services. That's going to cost us some money, but we're spending $80 billion on prison. We can cut that way down. Every year we pay it forward to jobs and training and support, like I just talked. Every year we pay that forward. That $80 billion is going to go down to 60, to 50, to 40, and we'll need less money for the prison complex. We'll need less money because we'll have folks that are employed and have a better life, and our country will be safer. And we have a second chance caucus I formed just this year in Congress. We've got 22 Republicans on it. Got all them first. You got to get Republicans first. Then we afraid. Then I got 22 Democrats. And we have all folks in the middle. And all of us want the same thing because Republicans want safety. And if people have a job, there's no crimes. And Republicans want to cut down the debt. So every 100 folks that are working, my company's hired now over 1,400 in the last 7 years, returning citizens. Every 100 returning citizens, we get a job. It's a $5 million difference between the cost of incarceration and the taxes they pay from their job. So every Republican, I can convince Republicans, $5 million for every 100 people, and you're safer. This is bipartisan, and we can get this one done. But we just gotta work it, and teach them one at a time.
We'd love to hear thoughts from constituents. What were your thoughts on these arguments that you heard? How did you come to your conclusion on whether you supported or not supported this proposal?
Let's get our young people over there. Come on, ladies. Give us some thoughts. Come on.
We have one from. We'll start. Do we have somebody who hasn't spoken at this table? Deborah?
I believe in this proposal because I've known many people on drugs and alcohol. I've seen them go to jail, call me from jail using drugs, where they got them in jail. No rehabilitation, no mental health treatment. Like he said, all kind of promises made about what will be there. Of course, people will say when you go to jail, you're supposed to be punished. But if you go with a drug addiction, mental health issues, I think that's going to make it harder for your stay. And when you come back, you're still not going to be recovered. You're going to start all over again. It's just another cycle. And because of the misery you felt in jail and got from jail, you're probably going to go at it 2 times as hard, So yes, I do support this proposal, you know. And for people who say, oh, you're just throwing the money away, would they rather throw it to the jail? Because they want to keep you there so they can get paid. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Excellent point. Couldn't agree more.
I saw we had two hands at this table. Esther. Yeah, you
Oh,
go
I,
first.
I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of all three proposals. The problem that I have is that providing to cities and states that want to expand. There's some states in this country that are sort of a cross between the state of nature and a Dickensian workhouse. So I'm hoping that if there was a gentle nudge for some of those states, because you had the problem when you expanded Medicare and Medicaid in some states, people would save money, hospitals would be open, jobs, but yet they went under. So I mean, I'm all in favor of that, but I would give them a little, nudge in a positive direction so that they would adopt it, not if you want to, but make it sort of pseudo mandatory if possible.
That's doable.
I just have one last comment. I know I promised I wasn't gonna say anything.
No, we love to hear from you, Esther.
All right, guys. My comment is that there is a scripture in the Bible that says if you get rid of a couple of demons and you go back to doing what you used to do, it will multiply times 7. So this is actually something we have to ask the jailers, people in jail, what their decision is. Do you choose to remain in the same pattern or do you want to change? If they are for changing, which I'm pretty sure this is something they will take seriously because they have experienced jail, they don't want to come back to jail. Some people, unfortunately, want to come back to jail. So we just have to do the main work of action. Do you want to come back to jail or do you want to change? If they want to change, then we can use money and funds that we have all um, um, gathered through taxes, through our hard work, through the government's expenditures, and through tax all from other countries or whatever way we get money, and we can spend that money on these prisoners. But I will assume that if that is their decision, then they will take the programs that they're putting seriously. And the next topic that I want to just share is that these issues are as simple as knowing how to apply for Medicaid. Medicaid is a low income and sometimes free program whereby you can get Medicare services for free. You can get prescription drugs for free. You can get medical services for free. And they also treat mental illnesses and substance abuse illnesses. So if you can apply for Medicaid or get help applying for Medicaid, this should also reduce some of the funds that we are spending on this different avenue.
Thank you. Congressman Trone, do you have any thoughts on those arguments?
It's just really important to put money into the jail system to change change what we have now as a prison-to-prison pipeline that's systemically racist. 82% of folks are black and brown. I mean, so there's a million things we have to do. It starts with education. It's hope, giving people hope. I mean, if they can see themselves with the job, they can see themselves with the family, and they all are going to want to have that. Everyone's going to want to have that, pretty much 99%. And so we've got to do that. We can't abandon folks in jail. The situation now is unacceptable. We're not doing the job training. We're not doing the education. We're not following the First Step Act, which we should be. We're not. We're not giving them the mental health wraparound services. We're not giving the MAT treatment using medically assisted treatment. We passed that bill last year also to eliminate the X waiver. So now doctors can prescribe MAT, Suboxone, buprenorphine for many, many, many more folks and use a drug to treat a drug, which is an important thing to do. And of course, one last thing I forgot to mention earlier, we need more money on research. We need to have more money at mental health at NIH and ARPA on research from here up. And from my neck up, that's research on addiction, why the hell it happens, and research on mental illness. We do a lot of research how to make a good kneecap, and that's great, but we're good there. We got to work on the hard stuff. And so that's what I encourage them when I drive medical research funding, which I'm very involved in, because I think medical research at the end of the day is one of our solutions here, on addiction.
Great. We have time for one more comment on this policy.
Great.
Over here.
For funding to prisons, I know a lot of people who do get arrested and end up in prison because of drug-related problems. They come from family members or their group of friends who are also in the same problems. So once they go into jail, their idea is to get out of jail and go back to where they were. So what would be the incentive to ask them to get treatment? Because they're not just going to say, oh, I'll get treatment, I'll get better, because most of them probably just want to go back to what they were doing. So is there going to be an incentive? Like, how are you going to get these people to actually take action in their life?
We go back to that word hope and seeing a different future. If all you can see is going back to what you were doing before, just like you said, I'm going to go back to the city, I'm going to deal drugs, that's how I'm going to support myself. But at some point in time, if you are an addict, you reach a bottom. And my nephew reached the bottom a number of times, and that's when they say, I need some help. But until you're at the bottom, you often do not want the help. So our job is to keep them alive. We can keep people alive with harm reduction. Then one day they will say, I need help. But as far as going back to that same old drug selling job, the only way they'll make that switch is they say, yeah, I can do that. And I'm probably going to end up right back where I am again, back here in prison. And most folks don't want to be their entire life in prison. And they can see that cycle because their same old friends are coming right back in. So we've got to figure out how to give them some education, and we got to give them job training. I mean, we can come out a lot of great union vocational programs where you can be an electrician, be a drywaller, be a carpenter, great programs, come out, make $70,000, $80,000 a year and create a different life. We have Mark Wilkes as a member up in Hagerstown, former drug dealer there. And Mark's, a lot of your folks that have been dealers are great entrepreneurs. Mark came out, opened up a general store. And, we've helped him because he couldn't get food stamps. He couldn't take food stamps. So a lot of the low income folks who are coming there had food stamps, but he couldn't take them because he has a felony conviction. So we've been working with him on those things, and we get involved in stuff on criminal justice, like in the weeds. And, it makes a real difference. I mean, someone, you can give them a real life, but we can't, some are going to keep seeing that. They're young and dumb. And what they say is people age out of crime. They age out of crime. Who you are when you're a 20-year-old man, when I was a 20-year-old, I'm a different man now. And we change over time. And after a while, they're like, this didn't work out for me. What else is out there? So.
Thank you for all the questions, for the meaningful, really great remarks. And we really appreciate it. Thank you, Congressman Trone, for your passion. So now we're going to talk about our final proposal. It deals with this question about how law enforcement should be dealing with or engaging people with substance use disorders. In some places currently, when law enforcement encounters someone with a substance use disorder committing a minor nonviolent crime, rather than charging them with the crime, they can require them for a treatment program, give them information about available treatment, and if the person refuses, they may be charged. So the proposal in front of Congress is this: provide funds to allow cities and states to set up or expand programs that would train officers to recognize when a person has a substance use disorder and how to interact and engage with them, and give officers the tools to require them to enter a treatment program and give them information. So the argument in favor that we will first discuss is it's better to address the underlying cause. Prison will only worsen the problem. Police are well positioned to help. This argument was found convincing by 80% of Maryland 6 residents, evenly with Republicans and Democrats, as well as independents. You'll see nationally, the numbers are very similar. 81% nationally found this argument convincing. The argument against is that the decision should be left to the courts. it's not the job of the police to determine whether someone needs treatment or not. 53% of the district found this argument convincing, 59% of Republicans, 45% of Democrats. And you'll see these numbers were quite similar to the US national numbers. 49% nationally found this argument convincing. So now we'll get to our final recommendation from the people of Maryland 6th District on whether there should be federal funds to cities and states that want to set up or expand programs that train officers how to recognize when a person has a substance use disorder and give them the tools to get them into treatment rather than prison. So this proposal, 74% of the people of Maryland 6th District were in favor of this proposal to add funding for law enforcement to train them on how to deal with substance use disorders. 68% of Republicans were in favor of this bill, as well as 81% of Democrats. You'll see that these numbers matched up very closely with the US national findings as well. Strong bipartisan support for this proposal to provide funds for law enforcement to deal with substance use disorders. So now, Congressman Trone, if you have any pieces you'd like to say, any surprises about these findings, we can begin our discussion.
Oh, it's fantastic. Everybody agrees. We're certainly in full agreement there. Let's support our police and help make them to be better. They've got a tough job. It's a tough job. We just did a bill last year. It was similar to this as total analogy, and it's supporting police. I did it with Karen Bass. So Karen Bass and I did a bill, $124 million in grant program for police. So when they enter a scene of a crime, they can understand if there's a mental health issue. Almost 20% of crime scenes, someone's in depression, anxiety. It's a mental health issue that's turned into a crime or potential crime, an argument, whatever. So we want police to recognize this is a mental health issue and not use violence. Put away any weapon and use your words. So it's helping police learn to use their words and recognize the situation for what it is. So that grant program is just rolling out now, and that's law, $124 million. So that's really analogous to exactly, the people's idea here. It's the same type of program. It makes all the sense in the world.
Great. So we would love to hear from constituents your thoughts on how you came to this decision, on whether you supported or came in against providing funds to help law enforcement deal with those with substance use disorders. I see one hand here from Madeline.
This behavior or just any situation, because there has been and always will be, unfortunately, corruption in this workforce. What measures would be taken to kind of ensure that there wouldn't be any abuse because of this knowledge that they would have on these people?
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. There's always going to be those issues where you have policemen that just have bad intent. I mean, we saw that, just a horrible example of that when we witnessed the murder of George Floyd on national TV. I mean, and that gentleman will be in jail forever, I hope. And just that was murder at the end of the day. So we're going to always have a few officers like that. But I'm a big believer in the goodness of people, and that most folks want to do it right. And if we can teach them what is a drug issue and not let that situation turn into violence, we can't have people shot dead. I mean, we got to deal with the issue, and it's a drug issue. And we got to take the temperature out of the room. It's like Karen and I's mental health bill. It's the same thing, taking the temperature out, giving the police the equipment to recognize something that they didn't have to deal with, 20, 30 years ago. We're asking our police a lot to do. We ask them to deal with mental health, ask them to deal with all these addiction issues, and ask them to deal with some rampant retail theft now we see all over the country, where, Target just closed 10 stores the other day. People walk in and steal things. And police are asked too much, so we got to support them and give them the training. But will there be a bad apple? Absolutely. You just never know who that bad apple is. I've got 12,000 team members on my company, and once in a while, a bad apple surfaces. And we do our best, but it happens.
Great. We'd love to hear from others.
Oh, the mic. So while I agree that they should be trained to deal with people with substance disorder, I think maybe we could put more funding towards teaching them when to call in a crisis team rather than telling them or requiring them to help people. Like you said, they have a lot on their plate. They're dealing with a lot already. So for them to also have to deal with deciding whether or not someone needs treatment, where they need to go, just have more of a crisis team situation, and letting them deal with it. But they do need more training to learn how to deal with them rather than using force, learning how to talk to them or talk down the situation, de-escalate the situation.
Couldn't agree with you more. It's like the mental health. We have ride-alongs now. I did a Frederick with the Frederick Police Department, and the ride-along was a mental health professional. And then that's the crisis team that went to the call where mental health issues were suspected. And so it's the same idea. I couldn't agree more.
From the minute that the officer enters the scene, his eyes are searching, and to have the training that he needs, he can call whoever after he sees and assesses the situation. To wait on another team while you have other things going on in the house, it maybe is something that needs all to be put together before it happens. But it's the officer's safety, the people's safety, and if there's one person doing something else, then they have to be attended to so they don't wreck the rest of it. So I see it as being a good program. I see there being bad apples too, but I also see that officers who have this training may feel a little more comfortable in their jobs too. And maybe it'll be something that catches like dominoes where, he knows how to do it. I'm going to learn how to do it. I don't want these people to die on my watch and where I could have helped them and they were on drugs and I just let them go, so hope.
It's like my staff did Narcan training for our staff. And then this year and last year, we held Narcan training for all the staffs in Congress. So we had hundreds of folks came on the Hill for Narcan training so they can carry Narcan and save a life.
Well, for me, the three proposals, I believe, I'm Alexander Banks, but these three proposals, I believe this is the best proposal out there because it kind of it could prevent a lot more from happening that could happen if you just get tossed in jail and like the girl back here said, come back out with the same mentality. So that's all I have to say.
Jails are incubators for more crime right now. They're made to house people and treated like animals in many cases. I mean, I was in a solitary confinement unit, not too long ago with Colette Peters, the head of the BOP, and every person in those cells, 2 cells, 2 bunks in a room, toilet in the middle, fully exposed, nope, just smaller than from me to JP. Every person was black or brown, 100%. And so, I mean, we have to call it what it is. We got to be real about this, and we have to change jails from being about punishment only to be, yes, you're punished, to be about coming out with a second chance, but they need to be changed in a physical way so you can do the job training there because they don't have the space to do the job training, the technology, the equipment, and they can do that, and it'll make the money will come back 10 to 1. I mean, it pays for itself.
I totally love this idea just because I have depression and anxiety, and I feel like substance disorders stem from mental health disorders. They come from there, they start there. And you use drugs to not feel what you're feeling. I had an event happened to me last year where I had a psychotic episode and I got into my car and I started driving. I live in Germantown and I drove all the way to PG County and I had gotten pulled over. I was in full panic mode. Luckily, the officer who pulled me over, he was very understanding. He helped me calm down. He didn't know what to exactly say. He was trying his best. He was doing as much as he could. My mom came to pick me up. I didn't get a ticket, a fine, or anything. I was let go. But I feel like if more officers were shown how to act like that, like how he acted, or even better training and teach them what to say, I feel like a lot of things and deaths could be prevented.
We have a hand of applause for that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. We 1000% agree.
You know, we heard a few years back the defund the police message, and that's not what we're about. It's really support the police and refund or rethink the police, right?
Yeah.
And let's have crisis teams and let's have better training and better support for policemen. They're probably not paid enough, just like teachers. You know, we need education for everybody, and the police are up there. They need training, and I know policemen, and they're under tremendous pressure, and every officer should have Narcan. Absolutely.
Yeah, we lost an officer in Montgomery County. Some of you remember that, TJ Bomba. You know, he took his life, and you know, we did a round table listening, just like we're doing here, listening. And we had 30-some folks there. We had the unions. We had the chief of police from Montgomery County. He was there. We had the firefighters, you know, and then we had it moderated by the head of mental health at NIH, Dr. Joshua Gordon. And he moderated. We pulled it together, and we came out of that meeting with 2 pieces of legislation that are now law. And the first one was, it's called our cops counseling bill, and that police get counseling when they have PTSD that's peer-to-peer and anonymous, because police were not getting the counseling because they didn't want to be on their record, because then they wouldn't move forward. So that's now law. And when that bill was signed by President Biden, we brought Mrs. Bomba and her 2 young children, 2 young boys, to the White House for the bill signing, and President Biden gave them the pen. It's pretty cool. And so that was so out of tragedy, you know, something came from his life. And the second one was, you know what the widow benefits were? He took his life because of PTSD, mental health. You know what the widow benefits were? You can guess. We can all guess, can't we? 0, because we don't treat mental health like physical. 0. So we passed that bill. We got over 400 votes in the House and unanimous in the Senate. Unanimous, because we work with everybody. And that now pays out $30-40 million literally every year for benefits for folks that took their own lives. So they're treated equally. So I say these listening type sessions, like we have here, the voice of the people, that's why you get ideas. As I said that in my opening prologue, that's where you get the stuff to change things, because that's where people, you guys know it inside out. And that's what we had there.
Thank you, Congressman. Are there any last remarks about this proposal from constituents? Great. Well, we are closing near the end of our program. I'm going to give Congressman Trone a couple of minutes if you'd like to say any final words about this process and your experience here today with your constituents.
I'll be brief, but I mean, I love the process. You can tell that. You know, I love listening and trying to learn about stuff, and my staff feels the same way. We got my staff all here today, you know, taking notes so we can get ideas. And we love for folks to come to us with a problem. As a businessman, a CEO all my life, bring me a solution, because you know what those solutions can be. Tell us what they are, and we'll figure out how to get it into an appropriations bill, get it into an authorizing bill, and try and make it happen. Because I'm not in this job to put the time in. I'm in this job to change stuff and then go do something else. This shouldn't be something where you die on your boots. You know, ideas like term limits, I love it. You know, you got to serve, go home. That's what it should be. Serve and go home. And so that's where my head's at. So we'd love to have you bring stuff to us. But these are issues that we hit on today that are the meat and potatoes of what I do. I mean, we hit all the stuff that's right up my alley. That's why they picked this subject for us, because they know we're the leader in Congress, and it's personal. It's personal, and it's personal to all of you. And so I really thank you all. Thank you. Thanks very much for being part of this, and vote. You got to vote. If we vote, we get better people in office that give a damn, and it's important. And you have folks in other districts around the country. Get them to send emails, send letters, talk about this issue, and just keep bringing it up. And say, as your member on the bipartisan mental health and substance use disorder task force, only have 140. What's wrong with the other? What's wrong with the other ones? Why aren't they? Don't they care? Well, we can see from that data, they're all dying. They're dying too. Everyone's dying. The whole country's dying. And so you got to push it across the country, get us more members, help us be more successful. And being bipartisan is, I'm a progressive Democrat, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, I'm also ranked the 10th most bipartisan member of Congress. So you got 535 folks. I'm 10. And but that's the only way you're getting done. And especially with the U.S. Senate, where you need 60 votes. We need 60 votes, which isn't true, but it is. And so that's our challenge, how to get to 60 by reframing issues. But Republicans and Democrats can all come together on saving lives, come together on, helping folks that are incarcerated, helping folks with mental illness. Those are things we can come together. If we can come together there, then maybe later on we come together somewhere else. One of my best supporters is a sheriff, Republican sheriff from Jacksonville, John Rutherford. He's seen the system for decades, and it's failed. So there he believes everything that we believe. Everything we believe today, he'd be here saying, yeah, smart on crime. And he's a Republican sheriff. So, we can bridge these gaps. And but it takes sitting with him. And, he and I spent a lot of time together, but it takes that. So thank you. Thanks so much, JP.
Thank you, Congressman Trone. Quick round of applause. Well, that will conclude our program today. And thank you all who joined us here, as well as those who joined us on the live stream. You can find our policymaking simulations at vop.org, where you can go through this process, not only on these proposals, but on hundreds of other proposals as well, related to the environment, campaign finance, democracy, many, many, many more. And thank you all for those who joined us today. My team will be around and will be in touch with you to check you out. And if you would like to grab photos with the congressman and mingle, we'll be checking people out over the next couple of minutes. And thank you all for joining us today. This really couldn't have happened without you all here. Your voice was really important to make sure that our government is working on behalf of the people. Thank you.